the window lever, and it wouldn't go. It wouldn't go all the way up, and then sometimes it wouldn't go past 3/4. So I have to
That's strange.
You
can't do anything.
Were you able to pull it up or no?
I didn't try.
Right. And I got JB.
I want you to hear this.
And I got Matt in the studio.
What's going on, everybody?
Well, there's a lot of things going on, Matt. First of all, this past week, we actually had one of our threes out on the road for an extended road trip. And JB took his Model 3 up the coast. And how did that go?
It was a great driving experience.
Until
it had a little bit of a malfunction with the rear window, and they had to change our plans.
Well, I gotta bring him down because
we were having such a great podcast. There was no negativity, there was no complaining, and it lasted for 15 seconds.
Well, because you know why? Because I think that our podcast really is just about the reality of owning one of these automobiles. And I jumped in the car and also headed up north.
Just like my channel.
And we decided to take the ICE vehicle. And we made it up there, no problems. It was comfortable and everything was fine. Didn't have to reroute any which way. I was up there in, where was I? I was in,
you were in Monterey.
I was in Monterey.
I actually called you.
Yeah, this is what's funny is I was up in Monterey.
Listen to this.
And then I get a phone call from JB and he's like, you're not going to believe this, but we rolled down the rear window and now, well...
No. Just open the door and close the door.
Oh, is that all it was?
Open the door and then closed the door and, got out and came back in. And when Rhea was getting into the back seat,
right,
I heard a big clunk. I go, what? That's a sound, right? So I got out and I looked at the...
you looked at the door and...
tried to adjust the window with the
switch.
With the window lever, and it wouldn't go all the way up, and then sometimes it wouldn't go past 3/4. So I had to keep nudging it up and whatever.
Were you able to pull it up or no?
I didn't try to pull it up.
Right.
So I called.
It's almost over. Just keep listening.
And they had me pull over to the side of the road, and and reboot the car. They wanted to power off the car. They said it would power it off for 2 minutes.
Right.
So that didn't correct anything. And then while I was on there, I asked if a Ranger could meet at the Salinas supercharger, because I knew I had to charge for a good amount of time because I was going into Scotts Valley, and there were no real heavy hitting superchargers around there. There were a lot of destination chargers and stuff, and I didn't have a hotel where I was going to be able to get a lot of
juice.
Recharge.
Right.
So I ended up asking, because that wasn't going to work out. So I asked if I knew there was a Monterey service center. So the service center was available to look at the car.
And this is on a Friday, I think, around
Friday and
one-ish.
Yeah, around 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Everything was going as planned.
Of course.
And then this came up. I didn't want to try driving the car into the hotel area and not being able to walk the car.
Right.
So I went to the service center, plugged into one of the superchargers. The guy came out, took a laptop, plugged in, and found out that the mechanism, the
rear window mechanism,
rear window, whatever they call the motor, lost its programming, and reprogrammed it and got it working. Said if it loses it again, that it would need a new motor.
Is that acceptable to you? That their answer is, if it happens again, like we think we have it fixed right now with this little software jump, but if it doesn't work and you're stranded somewhere again, feel free to call and we'll figure out a way to inconvenience you.
Well, let's say I didn't use that door. I refrained from using that door as much as I could during the trip.
So you get the gist of it. I didn't expect that to go on for 4 minutes, but it did. So let me start by saying that if you can't see it on the screen, this is the Talking Teslas podcast, which I started listening to just a couple of weeks ago. I needed a change of pace because some of these Tesla podcasts are very objective. They're not, you know, for lack of a better expression, they're not kissing Elon's ass, you know? They're just basically speaking of the reality of owning these vehicles. I mean, there are shortcomings, and which I've said that all the time, and now here I am hearing them say the same thing. And you have to ask yourself how much of that is acceptable, because after a while, especially in my case, it's totally unacceptable. I'm having software issues here and there to where I have to, you know, like for the first time, and this is actually the longest I've gone. This is the first time, I think, ever since I've owned this vehicle that I've been able to make it 2 weeks without having to hold down the scroll wheels to reboot it, or hold down the other 2 buttons to reboot the instrument cluster. So, I mean, that's a good thing. But today I'm going to have to do it because there's some loading errors coming up. I don't know what that's about. But I kind of think it's this podcast because only this one episode is coming up. The other ones don't want to play. So that's odd. And, you know, fortunately, this is the latest one. This one's from July 12th of 2018. So it's a good podcast. I think Tesla owners who tell the truth are the best thing for Tesla as a whole. I don't think that it's good for people to keep their problems to themselves and not say anything to Tesla about it. Because Tesla, of course, is going to play dumb whenever you bring these things up to them. And you say, hey, look, I'm having this issue. And they'll say, wow, that's the first time I've ever heard of that. I'm like, bull. That is not the first time you ever heard of it. This is me being myself. Oh, and I forgot. Disclaimer. No, I'm kidding. Heads up. I'm going to complain. And I'm going to continue to complain. So if you don't want to watch this, tune out. Because this one is not all about positive stuff. This is not about kissing up to Tesla or anything like that. This is just me speaking the truth about what's going on and how I'm glad to see or hear other people speaking up and saying, hey, you know what, I'm having issues too. Ultimately, the goal is for Tesla to succeed. That's why we've invested our money in their products. So there's no such thing as buying these things. I'm going to have to pause and come back. This can't be doing anyone any favors, you know? If you don't bring this stuff to their attention so that they can, you can't give them constructive criticism. You don't have to scream and cuss at Tesla. I mean, that's not the way to do it at all. It's not about bringing them down, trying to trash them, but you just have to tell them, hey, look, this is wrong and you need to make it right. And I'm not going to go away. I'm not going to lay down and take this. I'm going to stay on your asses until you get this right. It's just funny to me because at least 2 of these podcasts that I've listened to in the past week or so, they started off by talking about their road trips. And one of the things that they mentioned, or the main thing that they had a problem with, was range anxiety. It's just so real that it's ridiculous. And it's not even so much the range anxiety as it is like the time that it adds. I don't know if you saw my other video where I took the trip down to Tampa and back, but that trip for me made me feel like, you know what, there's no way I'm taking a Tesla out of the state again. There's just no way I'm gonna do that. It's not worth it. It's not worth the time that you lose sitting around at superchargers. It's just not worth it at all, not to me. You know, because like I said, I didn't get into this thing for the environment. I got into it because I wanted to get away from all of the things that were linked to the oil companies, to internal combustion engines in general, well, at least especially the ones that were unreliable. But I got tired of, you know, changing the oil. And as much as I drive around, I was changing the oil like every month. I was having to roll underneath my car and change the oil because I don't trust anyone else to do it. With that being said, I want to tell you right now, avoid Texaco Express Lubes. I have a video that I did a long time ago and I didn't put it out because I had filed a lawsuit against them. but nothing came to fruition from that. So just a quick note that you've got EV problems and you've got internal combustion engine problems. And here's a good one for you. Texaco Express Lubes. They're real big here in the Southeast. They're probably big everywhere. I did a little bit of research on them. Took my vehicle in for an oil change. Been dealing with those guys for a long time. And like a fool, wasn't really thinking about it because I had other things in my mind, but they'd been bugging me saying, oh, let us do an engine flush on your car. And I told them, yeah, okay, fine. And they forgot to put the oil back in. They left the engine flush in the vehicle and did not put the oil back in. Therefore, they destroyed my engine in my car. A car that was perfect to me. It was actually a Lincoln Town car. It was really good. And they destroyed that car. So sometimes you got to ask yourself, you know, what's worse, you know, dealing with stuff like that or dealing with the EV issues. Now, for the longest time, I've always said I'd rather deal with EV problems than to deal with problems like that, because having to put another engine in a car because some bozo forgot to take this BS engine flush stuff out and put the oil back in it, you know, that's unacceptable. And I'm going to make sure that video does see the light of day and that everyone knows that Texaco Express Lubes and their little lame upsell charges that they have, like engine flushes and stuff like that, they should be punished for that. They should not be allowed to, they should be outlawed for selling products like that you don't need. You don't need to flush your engine. Anyway, back to the main point that I was trying to make here. These issues that you can have with a Tesla, they're enough to drive you mad. But when it comes down to like not a simple reboot, it's like, you know, fit and finish issues. And because, you know, hey, look, you can't sit here and tell me that I should accept a vehicle that has a dashboard. And yes, I've sent all this stuff. Tesla knows about all this, by the way, believe me. You know, the dashboard on this vehicle, it's not right. There's something wrong with the speaker grill where it meets up with the windshield. It's totally jacked up. And I mean, these guys refuse to acknowledge, hey, this is not right. I mean, some of them will, but ultimately they're not doing anything about it. And I'm not going to lay off of them. I'm going to stay on them about it. Believe me, I'm on them I'm on them right now as we speak, because they're going to have to do something about this. But it doesn't make me feel good to hear that those Model 3s are just so riddled with issues right now. Because, you know, one thing I had been telling people is like, hey, you know, now's a good time if you're going to get a Tesla, get one, because they've worked out so many kinks. Well, with the Model 3, they still have a ton of growing pains, as you can see. But with the Model S and the Model X, I feel like definitely the Model S, they've worked out their kinks. But the X, it's turned so many people, like my clients, in a way, they kind of voted for this car. So I have clients who were going to buy Teslas. I gave them my referral code, and they saw these issues. This was early on when I gave them the code, and they said, you know what, I'm going to get another Range Rover, I'm going to get another Mercedes, I'm going to get another whatever. But they're all like, just like, no way. After seeing what you've gone through, there is no way I want to get a Tesla, because they're riding in this vehicle and, you know, they see this stuff. I have a client, her husband has a Tesla, and she was just shocked when she rode in this car and heard all those noises it was making. You saw that in one of my other videos, but the car was just making a bunch of noises, and she was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. I mean, yeah, it's embarrassing. And, you know, call me a complainer if you will, but these things have to be rectified. They have to straighten this stuff out. Their existence and their future depends on it. I mean, they really have to get on top of this stuff. It's just absolutely ridiculous.